off the top of my head, I mean, there's a lot of, particularly in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there's a lot of nonprofit organizations that do a lot of that type of work. Mass Children's.
You can, work for a service-oriented nonprofit like those ones. You can also think about working for foundations that support a lot of that work, and they range. We have big foundations like the Boston Foundation that does both research and advocacy and provides funding for services, and then smaller ones that really are more about providing funding for certain types of issues. There are, for example, venture capital investor firms that are interested in supporting, socially, environmentally, educationally sustainable kinds of activities. I actually have a friend who works for a consulting firm where, her job is to do the investigations for these kinds of investors, social sustainability, environmental sustainability investors, so that they can make decisions about who they want to make investments in.
The relationships and the networking part of it is critical. There's 30. I think the last number is 37,000 nonprofits in Massachusetts. Right. The healthcare industry. I mean, I know Partners Healthcare itself has 55,000 employees in the city of Boston. I mean, these are big behemoth industries where there's a lot of people, a lot of folks that probably went to Northeastern or went to or works at one of the places you're currently doing your co-op. Definitely take advantage and set up informational interviews. Say, hey, can I pick your brain? Can I grab a cup of coffee for half an hour? Just want to hear more about what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And those, I mean, I can tell you, there's no more valuable experiences I've had than those quick half-an-hour conversations. Just to see, like, do they like this? Do they not like this? Where did this take them? I mean, forums like this, but that one-on-one conversation, you never know where it could lead. So certainly, be proactive in that matter.
I couldn't stress enough about the informational interviews. Big thing that you do, don't make an ask when you're actually in those informational interviews. Don't ask someone for a lead, don't ask someone for a job. Really keep it into hearing about what it is they do. And you're paying it forward. You don't know necessarily how that may benefit you at the time, but I can assure you either you build a relationship or you are thought of when a future opportunity comes about. I actually landed one of my jobs through an informational interview, but it was 6 months later.
As a consultant, sometimes it actually does take doing some free work for certain organizations and I do a lot of pro bono work because I am a very social justice oriented person. So the folks, when I work with social direct action organizations that are very community based, I don't charge them for my services. I could charge, they can't afford them anyways, quite frankly. But what that does is it puts me in positions and puts me in places where later on somebody else calls me up and says, we have this project, would you be willing to work on it? Here's what the budget is.
A lot of it had to do with, with me, I spent a lot of my career, 11, 12 years, my day job was working for nonprofit organizations that advocated for issues. So I worked for the United Way. We became very versed on, children, early childhood development, brain development, birth to 5, third grade reading proficiency. These are things that, as I've got into the legislature, the same issues are sort of there. It's expanded tenfold. We're working on things now I have no idea about. There's plenty of opportunities. It could be, you organize for a school committee candidate, you have a street, you organize for a congressperson, you have a city. But it could be for, an organization that advocate, like Jobs with Justice, or some organization that, does hands-on grassroots policy work. They may have a different sort of paradigm in which they organize these things. I think just building that skill set, like I never thought I would jump into government. An opportunity arose because someone who I had a relationship with, 10 years ago, a friend and a mentor to me, it opened up and, I jumped at it. It was something that's always intrigued me, but it wasn't something I had my mindset on. But I think, little opportunities that came up, take advantage of them. You could always do them and fail. That's the one thing you realize, like, campaigns don't go on forever.
For me personally, what helped with the transition from organizing and doing electoral campaign work to getting into government, I realized that I wanted to go back to school and I needed some stability. And, jumping from one campaign to another was a little difficult in, preparing to apply to grad school. So that was one of the major decisions that provoked me to want to get into something longer term, and government seemed like an easy, transition into what I was already doing, and I had such a strong interest in it.
We give them leadership positions if they're sort of revered by their peers and things like that. People know that they're good attorneys. We count on their expertise a lot because, like I said, we're just a two-person department. I'm not a lawyer. The person I work with is a lawyer, but she wasn't a practicing attorney. She worked in the State House before this job, so a lot of this stuff is foreign to us, and we rely very, very heavily on our volunteers to understand the material, to analyze the material. We sort of help facilitate the process and understand the process enough to sort of put them in the positions that they need to be in to influence legislators' opinions or educate them, really, because a lot of things dealing with, very minute regulations and how they're going to affect people, the legislature is made up of maybe a third of them are attorneys, so a lot of these things are foreign to them as well, and it's really up to us to educate them, let them know what the pros and the cons are, and give them the information that we think they need to make an informed decision.
One of the many things that I do is provide public health analyses to organizations, right? So I'm part of this EJ Alliance. 2006, as getting connected to this EJ Alliance, they contacted me saying there's this proposal for a power plant in Chelsea. And we need to understand, I'm sure some people here know all about that, right? We need to understand what are the possible public health impacts of it. We need to understand, so we need somebody who understands all of this technical engineering language in these environmental impact reports. Now, as somebody who also has a social justice orientation, I also feel that it's my role not to just be the person that, says, here are the things that you should say, and I'll write the letter, and, I have a PhD, and I'm a public health professional, so I'll go and testify at hearings and things like that. I mean, I still do that. But I also want the communities themselves to be able to engage in the process constructively and as part of their own power, right? Affecting their own power.
What was really important for me, because I came from a legislative perspective, and when you're in the legislature, you have 5,000 bills filed every year, 6,000 bills filed every 2 years, whatever the case may be. You don't have time to do the research, so you depend on the relationships that you have. You depend on someone like Mike who provides you the information, and you have to do your own type of analysis. So the second point that I want to make, to follow up on what was just said, is you also have to realize that this information is coming to you. You have to vet it yourself. And you trust the relationships that you have with the people that you work with, but you also want to make sure that you're educated enough, and whether you have to continue your education, once you're done with your degree programs, whatever the case may be, get involved in professional organizations within your industry, so you're constantly brushing up on your skills so you can learn the best practices. Because you've got to learn how to, when the information is provided to you, you've got to learn how to digest the data. You've got to ask yourself the right questions. You've got to figure out whether these things are actually applicable to whatever the scenario may be. And then you have to figure out how you can actually fit that into a proper framework, whether it's working with the different coalitions or using the lens of maybe the boss you're working for at the time and that politician to make sure it fits within their public policy agenda.
I think there was a little bit more room for sort of entrepreneurship in the nonprofit.
Yeah.
So if I worked in development, I raised money, and it was a nonstop grind. If I hit a wall somewhere, I would just go in another angle and try to find a new partnership or a new company to sort of go after. I'm not allowed to raise money or do anything now because I'm a state employee and I work in the legislature. I think it's a patience. It takes a while to raise money, but the way the legislative process works and the way it's set up, it takes a while to get things done. And it's not something I was used to. I mean, I think if you think about it just on a basic level, there are 40 state senators. To get something through the state senate, well, first of all, you file a bill. It's got to go to a committee. It's got to get through the committee. There's a hearing process. Then once it goes, it'll just say, for instance, it goes to the Senate. You got to get 21 votes there. It's got to go through. Does the Senate President like it? Does the Chairman of Ways and Means like it? Does the person whose committee doesn't like it? Is there money attached to it? Is it just a language thing? Do the people in the House like it? Do you have 82 votes in the House or 81 votes in the House to get it through? Does the governor like it? Is this on their agenda? There's so many different dynamics.
Whether I'm at the office or outside the office, sitting here, I have the responsibility of, constituents, different bills that I believe in and I think should be passed. And you just feel like a weight of responsibility, whether I'm going grocery food shopping and I'm like, well, should I go to this supermarket or should I go to that supermarket? And it really just weighs on you, and I think it makes me more conscious of any decisions that I make.
In government, in public policy, if you're interested in it, there's definitely a role for you. You don't need to be the type A per se, or you don't need to be the person who likes to be out front, because let me tell you, some of the coolest jobs and some of the best jobs are actually behind the scenes. So it's really figuring out what it is that you want to do and then getting towards those opportunities.
We actually have we have the Northeastern Co-op in our office. We've had it for the last 3 sort of semesters. And biggest thing with us and our staff is just communication skills. We deal with people that are calling and walking in all day long, and just being able to make sure, because every person who comes in that office thinks that their issue is the most important thing going on in the world at that time. And you have to respect it. You don't know what's going on in their life. You may think this issue X is important, but you have to show them the proper respect and be patient and be able to communicate a sense of empathy and a sense of understanding. And at least can't say we'll solve their problem. We'll get you some sort of answer or point you in the right direction.
The ability to say something clearly and very concisely, because the people that you deal with in public policy do not want to read. They don't want to read any. If you have anything over a page, there's no way it's getting looked at. So the ability to synthesize information quickly and to convey it clearly is priceless. Absolutely.
The other piece is two-pronged. One, someone who has the ability to understand the bigger picture and the organizational structure, the higher level of understanding how things are connected and interconnected, because it's very process-oriented. That's something I look for. But also in particular, another thing I look for is someone who understands that there's protocol and decorum, and that's very important when you're working with institutions that are hundreds of years old, and there's certain things that happen, and you may scratch your head and say, well, why does it happen that way? And you really get the answer, well, just because that's the way we do it. And that might not be the best answer, but you have to respect the process and respect the institution.